And so when you're hearing the words, the rhythm on the page and the characters speaking to you through this, what particular elements of a character's struggle do you think sort of commands you to put it on paper? There is obviously there's something really compelling about these characters in the side of the room that are getting you to put them on paper. What is that? Is it the story? Is it what makes you say get out of bed to write something down about a character?
It is their story, and I think all of us, as human beings, we all have compelling stories. I think we don't realize it sometimes. I say to students, you think your lives are so boring. I said, but you have to think about that. That's that Thanksgiving dinner where Aunt Lulu showed up and she ate the pumpkin pie before dessert, so there was nothing to have for dessert, or Uncle Louie who comes down in his boxer shorts when he's not supposed to. I mean, there are things that happen in your family that are story worthy that we don't think about, and all of that came about because I believe that the oral tradition is still very important as far as storytelling, et cetera, is concerned, and I let students know there are people who will decide that you shouldn't read certain things in a book. They will either, take the books out of the library or take out passages thinking that they're protecting you from something, but no one can take away your voice and the story that you have to tell about your family experience. And it's all great. You hear old people saying, now when I was young, we had to walk 5 miles in the snow uphill.
Both ways.
Exactly. And we want to say, oh, stop, please, we can't take it anymore. But those are the stories. I believe that a lot of us know our family story that we're living right now. We might know our grandparents' story, and a few of us, if we're really lucky, know our great-grandparents' story. But after that, very few of us know anything beyond that. And that's sad that those family histories, those oral stories die when that person dies, because that's all part of your heritage and your legacy. And it's sad that we don't listen to older people anymore, or even take the time to have them come over and let that be what the day is about, learning about our past.
Where do you go for your oral stories? Is it just family events, or are there other places that you've run into people that tell really great oral stories?
Everywhere. Coffee shops, bookstores, just out on the street. And I'm kind of a conversationalist. I like to talk. Used to get in trouble in school for talking too much. But if we are open, people really want to share their stories with us. And so everywhere, I listen to everything. I was in a bookstore one day and I heard 3 teenage girls, and one of them said, Sarah's mom really likes me, but if she only knew. And that was it. And I remembered that line, and I kind of file it away in a category somewhere. It might show up in a story, but here's this teenage girl who thinks she's snowed a mom, and probably unbeknownst to her, mom probably knows what's going on.
The Eddie Haskell phenomenon.
Exactly. Yes.
Do you feel responsible for making your characters, or a character like that, a voice heard? Is that what compels you to be a writer? Or you said that whether you wanted to do it or not, those voices come out. Now, is that just a sense of responsibility, a sense, and if so, to whom? To you? These characters are figments, right? Not these,
right.
Clearly over here.
They're real.
Those are real,
yes.
and really frightening.
Yes.
But what's that responsibility as a writer? Where does it come from?
I feel a responsibility as a writer in a number of ways, but as far as their stories and them coming to me and asking me to tell it, I think that if I tried to create it myself, it wouldn't ring true. I think that's the beauty of listening to them and writing their truth. Because if I tried to incorporate what I felt or what I thought, I think there would be just something that didn't quite work. I can see that in a lot of writing. I was in a critique group, and a friend had given me her manuscript to read, and I read the manuscript, and I came to her and I said, this part here doesn't quite, and this part here doesn't quite. And every part that I brought up, she said, but that really happened to me. And I said, but is this your story? If it's your story, then you need to take that character, because all those things that are in there that happened to her, they don't work with what happened to you. If you want to tell your story, then you need a whole other book. But you're kind of inflicting you know, yourself onto your character, trying to merge the two together, and it doesn't gel, it doesn't work. So my responsibility, I just feel like I can get the best story possible by being true to the character and their story.
Okay. What are your favorite kinds of characters to write about? Do you have a particular, I mean, do you like working with kids and having them tell the story? Do you, adults, women, mothers? What are the favorite?
I like them all.
Okay.
My first book, my first and second book, the main character is a young man, and I say to the kids, now I have never, and still am not, I've never been a boy in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started working on the book, I was writing it. The character was a young girl, but her relationship with the dad in the story is wonderful. He's a good man. And I was a little bit jealous that there was a female character that had a better father relationship than I did. And so when I would start creating the poems, they always came out he. And I just had to give it over to that. But I think that there was something in me that couldn't have a female character have a dad that was, you know, that wonderful. It's like she was bragging.
I mean, that's really interesting because it gets you into sort of this situation as an author where you don't like the rivalry of your own character. Do you have other emotions that you've recognized, like besides, oh, I dislike this character or something like that? What else, you know, how else does that get processed for you?
Sometimes it comes in a version, you know, you avoid it. That's why they're still over there, right. Because some of the things that they want me to say, I'm not ready to be on their side. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm discovering I don't always have to be on their side. I think that's kind of, that makes for even more interesting writing, to be telling the story of a character and not be in love with or have a great love for the character that's speaking. So I like the challenge of that possibility.
Do you feel the same tension when you're reading? I mean, do you feel when you're reading other writers to pick up, say, experiences from them, or not really tricks, but lessons from other writers? How often do you go through and you go, you know, I really don't like this character, but the writing is compelling? Because I think that's a pretty common feeling for young students. They're like, oh, I don't like, young readers, they're like, oh, I don't like the character. They don't relate to the character, and it'll sort of stop them. But is there some way that you've been able to get past that? Occasionally when I don't like a character, I don't necessarily finish the book. I've tried to read a lot of great books that great books I have to confess that I just couldn't care about.
I don't think that I've ever had a character that I didn't like in the way that I would say, oh, I don't want to finish this book. I kind of embrace that dislike because to me, especially if it's a character that's not supposed to be likable, then that to me means the author has done his job and has created that character in a way that gets the point across. So that to me is good writing. And stories that don't have the endings that you want or that aren't going the way that you want them to go, I love that because I think sometimes we get kind of pat in things. In my first book, no one wanted the father to come home at the end of the story.
Because it was a happy ending, or because it was...
Because they felt, Chicago Tribune said, we love the poems, etc. The only thing that weakens the story is the father's return. And I thought, that's interesting. But I go back to that whole thing about my responsibility as the author. And it wasn't even just my responsibility. That father came to me and said, this is not who I am. I'm not a dad that would stay away from my children. He was introduced in the beginning of the book to be a certain kind of person. And then you're going to have this total metamorphosis into the man who leaves his family and never comes back. It didn't work for him, which means it didn't work for me.